Hi everyone, my name's Kabra, my pronoun is they. Welcome to Steel City Witch. You can find my writing at steelcitywitch.com. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. The question I get asked a lot, or that I see around a lot, that I want to give my personal answer to is, how do I talk to demons? Or how do I talk to angels? So I've already talked about what angels are. I'm going to be releasing a video on what demons are later, or at least my perspective on what these things are, because your mileage will vary. And I think I want to sit down and talk about how to get started first. Now, I was afraid I was going to have to write an entire book on this. The good news is that I do not, because there's a good stack next to me of recommendations, right? But I do want to talk about prerequisites and then go over some books so that you don't have to buy 5, 10 books. You can buy like one or two, find the one that works, and then move on with your life, right? So prerequisites. Number one is that you do need to be making regular offerings and prayer to a divinity of your understanding, right? So whether that's your holy guardian angel, some aspect of the Trinity, a polytheistic deity of your understanding, Lucifer, like you need to find a divinity that you can have a devotional relationship with, or in the case of Lucifer, it's more of a mentorship deal. And make time on a regular basis to like sit with them and build that relationship, right? Finding the divinity of your understanding, by the way, is a very simple sentence to say, and it's an incredibly long journey to take. It took me like 5 years, and it takes some people longer. So do not rush. The other thing that I can say is that if you are a polytheist and you are looking for a deity to work with until you get to a deity that's really going to be your long-term relationship kind of deal, Hecate is both already very familiar with this work and very accepting of newcomers. So that's my personal recommendation. Never a bad place to start. So step 2 is opening a channel of communication. You have a lot of options. You can do dream work. You can do divination methods. Pendulum and tarot are especially effective in this field. You can do scrying, which is very traditional. Water bowls are traditional. Crystal balls or glass balls are traditional. Black mirrors are less traditional, but they still have been around for a bit, and they're very strong in the tradition. And then, yeah, that's kind of it, right? There's dream work, scrying, divination, right? One of those. So you need to learn both how to receive messages, right? What will cause you to enter into a state where you can receive messages. And you need to learn to discern what's a real message and what is a projection of your own emotional reality, right? Like, when are you talking to a threat and when are you talking to your fear? When are you talking to a good omen and when are you talking to your desires? When are you talking to a spirit that means the truth? And when are you talking to a spirit that's trying to prank you because you're a newbie? And almost every person gets pranked at some point. It happened to me. So there's that. If you're looking for how to receive more messages, I would think about reading Transportation by Diana Paxson. I haven't read it myself, but I've heard really good things. So it's like trance, Trance, and then portation, like you take transportation like vroom vroom cars. You take the word trance like altered state, you stick them together. That's the title of the book. If you are trying to differentiate signal from noise, I would recommend Spiritual Accounting by Jim Two Snakes. It's short, sweet, to the point, incredibly effective. It's been recommended to like dozens and dozens of people. A lot of people have found good work with it. Highly recommend. So the next thing you need to do is, generally, you don't jump straight into demons after that. Usually what you want to do is talk to ancestors or land spirits or both, right? Starting ancestor veneration is a touchy, complicated topic. I'm happy to make a video with my take on it. I'm happy to recommend books about it. I'm happy to recommend podcasts. Let me know if that's a thing that you want more description on, but it really deserves its own treatment. Land spirits is the same thing. There's a lot to discuss there. So if you want to talk about getting in touch with and being in as good relationship with the land spirits as you can in 2022, that's another thing that we can get resources and I can make a video about. So that's usually where you want to start. And the reason why you want to start there is because if the ghost of your dead grandma comes up and is like, you know, I want cherries. And you're like, grandma was allergic to cherries. Then you know you're being pranked. It's like a lot harder to prank you when someone's pretending to be the ghost of your dead grandma than when somebody comes up and is like, oh, my name's Bill. You've never heard of me, but I'm really cool. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you might be Bill. You might also be, John pretending to be Bill. I don't know. So there's that. Land spirits, similarly, it's pretty easy to tell when something actually is the land spirit, because if you walk up and there's a bunch of like the plants are not doing well, and then the land spirit comes up and is like, you are the chosen one. You'll be like, I am not the chosen one. Look at how sad my garden is. I am definitely not the chosen one. I can't even grow squash. My hydrangeas, they're dying. So these are good, what are called tutelary spirits, because if you cut your teeth on them, it's a lot easier to start learning that spiritual accounting and discernment. Once you have those steps done, I say that like it's not going to take you like years, but once you have those steps done, then you can grab a book and start talking to demons and angels. But before I get into that, one last note, I'm sure some of you are going to go, Cabra, why do I have to spend 5 years on prerequisites in order to talk to demons? Didn't you used to just grab a book and go to it? And it's like, yes, you did used to do that. The reason why you used to do that is because you had been raised a good Catholic boy, and you've been praying the rosary since you were 5, and you've been doing devotionals to God the Father since you were 10, and you have been doing saint veneration since you were like 13. Right, so the thing is that a lot of these prerequisite skills you have to build up are skills that you would have learned much earlier in life over a much longer period of time, except that we currently live in a world where we don't always think these things are necessary to teach our children. And actually, some of the people who have the easiest time with having these skills already are people who grew up in fundamentalist homes, because despite having politics that are completely abhorrent to me, they do actually teach their children to develop a spiritual practice from a young age. Do they also have politics that kind of want me to die? Yeah, but they do also actually teach their children some of these basics from like a much younger place than we learn them as adults outside of fundamentalist Christianity. So, we have to learn them, and it takes time, because you were supposed to learn these things when you were much younger, but you didn't because of the culture you were raised in, so now you have to learn them as an adult. And there's no shortcut, because what you are doing is you are training muscles. You are learning muscle memory, and you are learning how things feel. So that means that it's not a matter of like, oh, I have memorized 2 + 2 = 4. Now I know how addition works. It's like, no, you actually have to go out and do the push-ups if you want to have the arm muscles, right? So with all that preamble out of the way, let's get to the easy part, which is books that you can do. So my absolute number one recommendation is Consorting with Spirits by Jason Miller. He goes over a lot of prerequisites. He's very friendly to a wide range of people's religious experiences. He has enough structure that you will know what to do. This book is very good for most demons and angels. Excuse me. The planetary archangels are a little picky, so they might not necessarily love the method. But my recommendation for that problem is if you start with Raphael, he's both an angel and a saint. So he's less picky. Also, who doesn't love some Mercury energy, right? So this is my number one absolute recommendation. The other thing I will say is that there are some prerequisites that aren't covered in this book, but Miller has written other books that are in the same very accessible reading style that you can grab and make use of. So this is my number one pick. If you are absolutely 110% not Christian and do not even want to hear about it, and you don't mind a little more structure than what Miller gives, I do recommend Spirit Conjuring for Witches by Barabbas. Frater Barabbas has a very excellent take on the structure that allows you can take on the structure, use it, and then make changes if necessary moving forward in your own practice. I don't recommend dropping any of the structure that he gives, but shifting things around certainly would not be terrible once you've tried them the way they're recommended. So this is also incredibly good for talking to demons, elementals, what have you. Most angels as well. Planetary archangels, again, I don't know that Frater Barabbas really goes into them here, but I got a book for that, and that is Luminarium by B.J. Swain. If you are very comfortable with ancestor work and you are very comfortable with Christian modes of doing things, Luminarium is excellent. It is a no-nonsense, modernized grimoire. You don't have to go out and buy like an expensive sword. You don't need like a 9-foot circle, but it still has, again, the structure and thoughtfulness required not to hurt yourself, right? And then, but yeah, it is very ancestor-centric, and it does draw quite a bit from Mathers's Keys, and we'll get to Mathers's Keys at the end of this. So Luminarium by B.J. Swain, another excellent pick. I do want to talk about 2 more books that are for traditionalists. So if you're like, oh, but I like the old tradition, I just really only want to know which one book to read because I don't have enough money to buy like 10 of them because some of them are incomplete, I have 2 recommendations for you. The first one is the Grimoire of Heaven and Hell. This is also especially good if you are into astrology and you know what deacons are. If you don't know what deacons are, that's fine. You might still be able to use this book. This focuses on the Shem Himapharesh angels, and it has some directions. You will probably need to repeat the conjurations that are in it many times, but you don't need to buy a lot of expensive stuff. One thing that it also has an advantage of is that it is the most descriptive of the spirits. So I actually use this as a reference material for the usual 72 demons of the Solomonic tradition of grimoires. It also has the added benefit of being one of those systems where every single demon has an angel paired with it. So this book is really good. Again, more of a traditionalist bent to it. Pretty slim volume, not too much, not too little. Also a recommendation. So that's the next one. The last one I'm going to go over is not for the people who have light wallets. You got to have some amount of dollars to do this one, but it is also, again, aimed more at traditionalists. So, Stephen Skinner and David Rankine translated The Keys to the Gateway of Magic, Summoning the Solomonic Archangels and Demon Princes. So, this is both angels and demons. It is very traditional. It is very much angels over demons. The hierarchy is very strong in this one. The thing that's good about this one is if you want to memorize or read very long conjurations, because that for you is an important part of the practice and it really functions for you, this is the book. It is a complete cosmology. There's some admonitions in there and some directions all in one. There's seals. They're also important. You will need to shell out money either for a glass orb or for a show stone that's made out of crystal and is also probably orb shaped. And you may end up making an almondel. If you don't know what an almondel is, don't panic. Get one of the other books I recommended. But yeah, so that's all of those. One last thing before I go is that one of the things you have to know about trying to work with demons and angels in 2022 is that we are all kind of standing in the shadow of Mather's translation of a series of grimoires called the Keys of Solomon. His directions are incredibly thorough and very picky. Why? Because he was one of the first people to begin the work that is being done now of pulling together a bunch of different folios of the same grimoire, translating them out of old languages, sometimes literally ancient languages, and then trying to compile them into a usable manual. The entire pile you see here is coming up out of this work that Mathers did, because now it's like there's a whole market for people who want to, they digitize folios from medieval manuscripts in libraries. Hobbyist transcribers or translators will get those and transcribe and sometimes also translate them. translators will come in and grab transcriptions and then translate them. And then usually those translators will also work with an active practitioner if they're going to try and make a translation that's for practitioner use instead of just for scholarly research, and try and get that to be a usable manual, right? Stephen Skinner is actually a great example of, Dr. Stephen Skinner, excuse me, is a great example of someone who does this work. Well, what does it mean then? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly of standing in the wake of the Mathers translation of the Keys, right? The good is that it happened. There was a revival and it involved grimoires, and we have these books. And while I think sometimes American society overvalues books as the only way to learn, because they're not, and they're not necessarily better than any other way, they are still a way, and they're a way that is historically and currently important. So that's good. The downside is that with Mathers' translation, there's this idea that comes up that if you don't do everything perfectly, the demons are going to get you, you know, or the angels are going to get so mad that they're going to kill you, right? You got to let it go. You really got to let it go. Yes, if you form bad relationships with spirits, if you form bad relationships with spiritual practices, you can hurt yourself. The same is true of things like alcohol, cars, fire. These things have power. If you mess around with them and you don't understand that there are consequences for your actions, you will get burned, sometimes literally. But I think that there's a difference between having a fire extinguisher in your kitchen, which is a reasonable amount of procedure safety to have, and like sitting there cooking your morning breakfast, making eggs with oven mitts on. Like, obviously, you can take the oven mitts off if you're not going to be touching the pan directly and just make your eggs, right? Like, grab the handle, grab your spatula, you'll be fine, right? So that's kind of what I want to say is we owe Mathers a great debt. I consider him an ancestor, you know, but at the same time, his translation of the Keys and some of the stuff that's talked about in the Golden Dawn era workings give us the impression that there's not a lot of room for individual variation, individual experience, you know, growth, and also learning by making mistakes. So keep that in mind as you move forward. I hope that you'll be able to make informed decisions, and I hope that you will understand that relationships are worth building, even though they do take a lot of time and effort. And with that, you know, like 93, have a good day. I'll see you in the next one.